I found 20 years of lies in the reflection of a champagne glass. It wasn't some dramatic revelation. No catching them in the act. No lipstick on a collar like in those old movies my mother used to watch. It was smaller than that. Quieter. The kind of thing you'd miss if you weren't paying attention. But I'm a forensic accountant. Paying attention is what I do. The Michigan Union Ballroom was packed with people I half remembered from a life that felt increasingly like it belonged to someone else. The class of 2002 reunion committee had gone all out. Ice sculptures shaped like wolverines, a jazz quartet playing standards nobody was listening to, and enough champagne to float a small yacht. Lisa had been looking forward to this for months, buying a new dress, getting her hair done, talking about which sorority sisters she hoped would show up. I stood near the bar nursing my second drink, watching her across the room. 46 years old and still beautiful. The kind of beautiful that made other men look twice and then look away when they saw me standing nearby. She was laughing at something Deborah Kessler said, her head thrown back. That particular laugh she saved for people she wanted to impress. A photographer was working the room, one of those professional types with a camera that cost more than my first car. He was snapping candids, and I watched him show the digital preview to a group of women near the window. They giggled and pointed, probably at their own faces. Then he moved toward Lisa's group. I don't know why I walked over. Maybe I wanted to see myself in the background of one of those shots, proof that I existed in this room full of strangers who used to be friends. The photographer was scrolling through his recent shots, and I leaned in casually, drink in hand. Just another middle-aged guy at his college reunion pretending he wasn't checking to see if he still had hair. The image that stopped my breath wasn't of me at all. Lisa, in her new blue dress, standing slightly turned. Her hand resting on the lower back of a man beside her. Not a friendly hand. Not the casual touch of an acquaintance. This was intimate. Familiar. Possessive. The kind of touch you give someone whose body you know as well as your own. The man's face was turned away from the camera, but I knew that posture. I'd lived with that posture freshman year of college, watching him bring different girls back to our dorm room while I pretended to be asleep. Steve Caldwell, my freshman year roommate. Lisa's friend from study group. The guy who showed up at our wedding with a date, who looked like she'd stepped out of a catalog, who sent us Christmas cards every year with photos of his picture-perfect family, who I'd grab a beer with maybe once every couple of years when our paths crossed at university events. Steve Caldwell, whose company I'd heard was worth $40 million now. Steve Caldwell, who was married to Brittany Taylor Caldwell, the former local news anchor who'd reinvented herself as some kind of lifestyle guru with millions of followers online. Steve Caldwell, whose hand my wife was now touching like she owned it. The photographer scrolled to the next image. I didn't react, didn't move, didn't change my expression at all. 23 years of marriage, 3 children, a house in the suburbs with a pool we used maybe 6 times a summer. And in that moment, all I felt was the click of something shifting in my brain. Not rage. Not yet. Clarity. I started cataloging. The way Lisa had insisted on this reunion, even though she usually complained about these events. The new dress, not her usual style, lower cut, more expensive. The hair appointment last week, the manicure yesterday, the gym sessions she'd doubled in the past month. All of it suddenly rearranging itself into a pattern I should have seen years ago. A good forensic accountant never tips off the subject of an investigation. I finished my drink, smiled at the photographer, and went back to the bar. Steve found me there 20 minutes later, that same easy grin spreading across his face. Tom Whitfield. Man, it's been what, 2 years? The hospital fundraiser, I said, shaking his hand. You and Brittany were at our table. Right. Great event. He signaled the bartender. How's Lisa? She looks fantastic tonight. She's good. Busy with the real estate thing, keeping up with the kids. I kept my voice neutral, pleasant. How's the company? I read you landed another government contract. DoD cybersecurity, 12 million annual. He didn't try to hide the pride in his voice. We're expanding the team by 30% next quarter. Impressive. Security clearance work must be intense. Something flickered in his eyes. Just for a second, barely noticeable. You know how it is. Background checks, paperwork, the whole 9 yards. Worth it, though. I'm sure. Lisa appeared at my elbow, slightly breathless. There you are. Tom, Deborah wants to introduce you to her husband. He's in financial consulting. She thought you two might have things in common. Of course, I smiled at Steve. Good catching up. Likewise, man. We should grab beers sometime. I'll have my assistant set something up. I let Lisa lead me away, her hand warm on my arm. Normal, wifely. The hand of a woman who hadn't just been touching another man's back in a way that made my stomach turn. I spent the rest of the evening being the perfect husband. Attentive, charming, completely, utterly present. And watching. Always watching. For the next 48 hours, I watched my wife like she was a set of financial statements hiding a discrepancy. Every smile she gave me, every casual touch when she passed by in the kitchen, every "love you" tossed over her shoulder as she headed out. I cataloged it all. Noted the timestamps. Cross-referenced with her stated schedule. Lisa had always been good at multitasking. Now I understood what she'd been juggling. Monday night, 2 a.m. I couldn't sleep, hadn't really slept since Saturday, and I was lying in bed staring at the ceiling when her phone buzzed on the nightstand. She was out cold, wine drunk from a girls' dinner that had run late. The screen lit up with a notification preview. Michigan Alumni Committee. I can still taste you. Thursday can't come soon enough. Lisa wasn't on any alumni committee. I didn't touch her phone. That would have been too easy and too risky. She might notice a message marked as read, might check her screen time, might do any number of things that would alert her that something was wrong. Instead, I slipped out of bed, went downstairs to my home office, and opened my laptop. Here's the thing about being married to a forensic accountant. I handle the family's digital infrastructure. I set up the shared iCloud plan 5 years ago when Emma was heading to college and we wanted to make sure we could track all our devices. Everyone's phone backs up automatically, every night, to a cloud server I pay for and monitor. Lisa knew this, of course. But Lisa, like most people, had the technological attention span of a goldfish. She'd forgotten about the backup the same way she'd forgotten that I could see her location on Find My Friends, the same way she'd forgotten that our credit card statements showed every purchase in real time. 20 years of lies, and she'd gotten sloppy. I logged into the backup, navigated to her messages, and there it all was. The Michigan Alumni Committee was saved in her contacts with that name, but the number matched Steve Caldwell's business cell. I looked it up in the university's alumni directory just to be sure. 3 years of messages sat in the cloud, which was as far back as the storage went. But the messages themselves referenced history that stretched much further. I can't believe it's been 20 years since that first time in your dorm room. Our anniversary coming up, not our wedding anniversary, not any date I recognized, but something in May that clearly meant something to both of them. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd chosen you back then instead of playing it safe. Playing it safe. That's what I was. A safe choice. A backup plan with a steady income and a forgiving nature and no idea that his entire marriage was a consolation prize. There were photos. I didn't look at most of them. Got a glimpse of skin and angle and had to close my eyes for a moment, breathing through the sudden urge to put my fist through the monitor. But I saw enough to understand that this wasn't some emotional affair, some we just talk situation that certain relationship counselors try to minimize. This was a full-fledged second life, running parallel to the one she'd been living with me. I found calendar entries marked dentist, except Lisa hadn't been to the dentist in 18 months, according to our insurance claims, and these appointments coincided perfectly with Steve's business trips to Detroit. The pattern was obvious once you knew to look for it. Steve travels to Detroit for meetings, Lisa has a dentist appointment, or showing a property in Southfield, or lunch with an old friend, and somehow they both end up in the same 3-block radius at the same time. I found a shared email account, wolverine2egmail.com, that they used for planning and for storing the things they couldn't risk keeping on their primary phones. The email history went back further than the texts. 7 years of correspondence, hotel confirmations, even a shared document titled Our Story that chronicled their relationship in nauseating detail. Remember when you almost told Tom at Jake's baptism? I could see it in your eyes. You wanted to just say it. I held your hand under the table and you calmed down. That's when I knew we could do this forever. Jake's baptism. My son was 3 weeks old, and my wife was holding her lover's hand under the table while I made a toast about family and commitment. And then I found the message that turned my clarity into something colder. It was 14 years old, recovered from an email Lisa had forwarded to the secret account, probably for sentimental reasons, a digital love letter she wanted to keep forever. I'm late, 3 weeks. It might be yours this time. And 3 weeks later. False alarm. But would it really have been so bad? I sat in my office chair and I did the math. 14 years ago. This time, implying there had been other scares, other moments of uncertainty. 3 weeks late. Noah was born 9 months after that exchange. Noah, my youngest. 14 years old, freshman in high school, the kid who looked nothing like me and everything like Lisa's side of the family. Or so I'd always told myself. The kid who had my sense of humor and my love of bad movies and my complete inability to fold a fitted sheet. The kid who might not be mine at all. I didn't cry. I didn't break anything. I opened a new folder on my encrypted drive and named it Project Clarity. Then I called in sick to work for the first time in 4 years. The 23andMe kits arrived in their cheerful little boxes, covered in graphics of diverse families discovering their heritage. I'd framed it perfectly at dinner the week before. I was thinking, I said, passing the salad to Emma, who was home for fall break. We should do one of those DNA ancestry things. For Christmas. Give the results to your grandparents. They'd love to see the family heritage mapped out. Lisa's face had done something complicated for a fraction of a second. A micro-expression I'd never have caught before, but now I was watching everything. That sounds fun, she said, and her voice was steady but her hand tightened slightly on her wine glass. All 5 of us? Jake asked, more interested in the roles than the conversation. Family project, I confirmed. Spit in a tube, send it off, find out if we have any Viking ancestors. Noah shrugged. Sure. Better than the time you made us do that family tree poster for Thanksgiving. We all submitted our samples. We all waited the 3 weeks for processing. And during those 3 weeks, I did other things. Steve Caldwell's company, Caldwell Digital Solutions, was a government contractor. I knew this from the alumni newsletter updates. There was always some mention of Steve's latest Pentagon deal, his innovation in cybersecurity, his genius at turning ones and zeros into dollar signs. What I didn't know, until I started digging, was that those government contracts required a security clearance. And security clearances required an SF-86 form, the most detailed background check form in existence, covering everything from your finances to your foreign contacts to your criminal history. I know the SF-86 well. In my line of work, I've reviewed hundreds of them, usually in cases involving government contract fraud. I know what's on them, and more importantly, I know what happens when someone lies on one. It took me 3 days of careful research to find Steve's DUI from 2019. It had been quietly expunged in Oakland County. Someone knew someone, money changed hands, the record vanished. Except it didn't really vanish because nothing ever really vanishes if you know where to look. And I knew exactly where to look. He hadn't disclosed it on his SF-86. I was certain of that, because you can't expunge something and then also admit to it. The whole point of expungement is to pretend it never happened. But the federal government takes a dim view of pretending. I started a second folder, Project Caldwell. The DNA results came back on a Tuesday in mid-November. I was alone in my office when I opened the email, having told Lisa I was working late. The results were displayed in colorful charts and percentages, each family member's genetic makeup broken down into pie slices of ethnicity. Emma, 50% match with Tom Whitfield. My daughter, Jake, 50% match with Tom Whitfield. My son, Noah, 0% shared DNA with Tom Whitfield. I stared at the screen for a long time. I'd known, intellectually, that this was possible. Probable, even. But seeing it in black and white, the genetic evidence that the child I'd raised for 14 years, the boy who called me dad, who I'd taught to ride a bike and throw a baseball and shave when the first peach fuzz appeared, seeing the proof that he wasn't biologically mine was different than suspecting it. I closed my eyes, breathed, reminded myself that evidence was evidence, and evidence was what I needed. Then I started looking for Steve's genetic markers. I didn't have Steve's DNA, but I didn't need it, not directly. I created a fake 23andMe profile using information I'd gleaned about his family tree, and I started messaging distant relatives. A second cousin in Minnesota, a great-aunt in Florida. They were delighted to talk to someone interested in genealogy, happy to share information about the family's Scandinavian heritage. "Oh yes," the cousin wrote back. "The Caldwell family has very distinct Norwegian ancestry. We all show around 23–24%. It's quite striking on the chromosome browser." Noah's results showed 24% Norwegian heritage. Lisa's family was Italian and Irish, not a Scandinavian in sight. The math was done. The conclusion was inescapable. My son was not my son, at least not biologically, but he was still my son in every way that actually mattered. And that was something I needed to remember as I moved forward with what came next. Patricia Webb's office was on the top floor of a building downtown, with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. She was 62, silver-haired, and had the kind of predatory smile that made corporate executives cry in depositions. They called her the Pit Bull in legal circles, and the nickname was well-earned. She was also the fifth divorce attorney I'd consulted with in the past 2 weeks. "Mr. Whitfield," she said, gesturing for me to sit, "I have to say, your approach is thorough." "I'm a forensic accountant," I said. "Thorough is what I do." "I'm aware. I've seen your work in the Hartley case. Impressive analysis of their offshore holdings." She settled into her chair and folded her hands. "You should know that by consulting with me and several of my colleagues, you've effectively conflicted us out of representing your wife. That's intentional, I assume? I needed to find the right fit." She opened a folder on her desk, my intake paperwork, the preliminary information I'd provided. 23 years of marriage, 3 children, primary earner, though your wife has worked part-time as a real estate agent for the past 8 years. And the reason for dissolution is infidelity. 20 years of it, with my college roommate. Patricia's eyebrows rose slightly. 20 years. Give or take. It apparently started before we were married and never stopped. I have documentation, messages, photographs, financial records showing hotel stays, the works. I also have DNA evidence that my youngest child is not biologically mine. He's the product of the affair. She was quiet for a moment, reviewing the documents I'd provided. When she looked up, her expression had sharpened. Michigan is a no-fault divorce state. Technically, the reason for dissolution doesn't matter in terms of dividing assets, but it affects spousal support decisions. It can, yes, especially with documentation this comprehensive. She flipped another page. "You've also discovered that your wife has been siphoning funds from your joint accounts?" 500 here, 800 there. Over 10 years, approximately $47,000 has been moved to a personal account I wasn't supposed to know about. She's been using it to fund the affair, hotel rooms, gifts, a storage unit containing items she couldn't keep at home. Patricia leaned back. What exactly is it that you want, Mr. Whitfield? I'd thought about this question a lot over the past few weeks. The answer had evolved from raw emotion to something more refined. I want out of the marriage with my fair share of assets. I want to maintain my relationship with my children, including Noah. I want my wife to face consequences for what she's done, but I don't want to destroy her completely. She's still the mother of my children. And the affair partner? Steve Caldwell has a security clearance that required an SF-86. He lied on it, failed to disclose a DUI, among other things. His company has $12 million in annual government contracts. If he loses those contracts, his company collapses. Patricia's smile was slow and unpleasant. You want to burn his world down. I want the truth to have consequences. Same thing, in my experience. She closed the folder. I'll take your case, Mr. Whitfield, but I should tell you something first, even though I probably shouldn't. Client confidentiality prevents me from discussing details, but I will say this. Steve Caldwell's wife came to see me 6 months ago. Consultation only. She didn't retain me. I processed this. Brittany Caldwell suspects something. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying she came to see me. Patricia met my eyes. Do with that information what you will. The coffee shop in Birmingham was the kind of place where a latte cost $8 and came with a tiny biscotti balanced on the saucer. I'd done my research. Brittany Caldwell, lifestyle influencer, 2.3 million followers, brand ambassador for everything from organic skincare to high-end kitchen appliances, posted sponsored content from this specific location every Tuesday afternoon. I arrived early, claimed a corner table with my laptop, and waited. She walked in at 2:15, exactly as scheduled, wearing workout clothes that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill. Her photographer trailed behind her, already adjusting his camera settings. I watched her pose with a smoothie bowl, smile brilliantly at the lens, shift angles, review the shots on the preview screen. 40 minutes later, the photographer left. Brittany settled into a booth with her phone, scrolling and typing, occasionally sighing at something on the screen. I approached her table. Excuse me, sorry to bother you, but aren't you Brittany Taylor? My daughter follows you religiously. She'd never forgive me if I didn't at least say hello. Brittany looked up with the practiced smile of someone who gets recognized constantly. That's so sweet. What's your daughter's name? Emma. She's a sophomore at Michigan. Actually, that's how I know who you are. I went to Michigan with your husband, class of 2002. Something flickered behind her eyes. The smile stayed in place, but it got smaller. Is that right? Small world. Steve and I were roommates freshman year. In fact, I paused, watching her carefully. My wife Lisa was friends with him too. Study group, I think? Lisa Thornton, her maiden name was. The smile vanished entirely. Brittany's face went through a series of expressions in quick succession. Recognition, calculation, decision, before settling into something cold and careful. Why don't you sit down, she said. It wasn't a question. I sat. Lisa Thornton, she repeated slowly. I found that name in Steve's college things 3 years ago, on a love letter, dated 2 weeks before our first date. I found evidence of their relationship last month, I said. It's been ongoing, 20 years. I know. Her voice was flat. I've known for a while, I just couldn't prove it. We stared at each other across the table. Two people who'd been lied to by the same two people for the same amount of time, in the same invisible ways. How long have you suspected? I asked. Really suspected? About 4 years. There were little things. Phone calls he'd taken another room, Weekends he was supposedly golfing, but came home without a tan, the way he'd light up whenever her name came up in conversation. Brittany's fingers tightened around her coffee cup. But I'm an influencer. My whole life is about image. I told myself I was being paranoid, insecure, that a woman with 2 million followers shouldn't be worried about some random housewife from the suburbs. She's not random. No, she's not. Brittany looked out the window. About 18 months ago, I found a receipt in his jacket pocket. Graduate Hotel, downtown Ann Arbor. The room service charge was for champagne and strawberries. I asked him about it, and he said it was for a client dinner. I wanted to believe him, so I did. But you didn't. Not really. No. She turned back to me. I started watching more carefully after that, noting the patterns. He always gets quiet before Detroit trips, focused, distracted, and he always comes back in a good mood, relaxed, like something's been relieved. I'm not here by accident, I admitted. I researched your schedule. I needed to talk to you. Why? Because I'm planning to divorce Lisa, and I'm planning to destroy Steve's career. But I wanted to know if you were interested in coordinating. Brittany's laugh was harsh and humorless. Coordinating. You've built your entire brand around your marriage. Power couple. Family first. A divorce without preparation would cost you everything. Sponsorship deals, followers, the whole empire. So you're saying I should plan my exit strategy. I'm saying we both have good reasons to want this done right. Timing matters. Narrative matters. The way the story gets told, that matters most of all. She was quiet for a moment, processing. Then, what did you find? Specifically. I gave her the highlights, the messages, the DNA results, the hotel records. Her expression got grimmer with every detail. When I mentioned Noah, she closed her eyes. He has a child with her, she said. A child. A son, 14 years old. I raised him. I still think of him as mine. God. She pressed her fingers to her temples. I've been on birth control for years. Steve doesn't know. He keeps pushing for kids, talking about his legacy, about the Caldwell name continuing. I couldn't bring a child into a marriage I knew was built on lies. That's a heavy secret to carry. It's nothing compared to what they've been carrying. Her voice hardened. 20 years, 3 children, one of whom is his. And he just went along with it. Watched another man raise his kid, played uncle at birthday parties and never said a word. Do you think he cares? About Noah? I think Steve cares about Steve. Everything else is just accessories, props for the image he's trying to project. She shook her head. Including me. I let that sit for a moment. Then, do you have access to Steve's phone? I know his passcode. Have you looked? Once, about 6 months ago. I found photos of a woman I didn't recognize. Brown hair, blue dress, in what looked like a hotel room. The Graduate Hotel, I said. Downtown Ann Arbor. Brittany nodded slowly. I hired a private investigator, she said. 2 months ago. I didn't tell anyone, not my lawyer, not my family, no one. I needed proof for myself first. And? He's been documenting everything. Dates, times, locations. He has photographs. She met my eyes. I wasn't ready to use them yet. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. Are you sure now? She didn't answer for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was steady. The voice of a woman who'd made a decision. There's something else you should know. About Steve's company. What? He has a silent investor. Someone who put in $500,000 3 years ago to help him through a rough patch. Brittany's voice was bitter. Lisa brokered the deal. The investor is her father. I felt the blood drain from my face. Vincent Thornton, Lisa's father, old-school Italian-American patriarch, the man who'd walked his daughter down the aisle and shook my hand at the reception and told me to take care of his little girl. Vincent had invested $500,000 in my wife's lover's company. Lisa had arranged it. She played everyone, I said quietly. Both families. For 20 years. Yes, Brittany agreed. She did. We sat in silence for a moment. Two strangers bound together by betrayal. I'm in, Brittany said finally. Whatever you're planning. I'm in. Christmas was always a big production at our house. Lisa started decorating the day after Thanksgiving, and by mid-December the place looked like a department store window. Lights on every surface, a 12-foot tree in the living room, fake snow sprayed on the windows. This year, she'd outdone herself. Maybe guilt made better decorators. The annual party was on December 22nd. 75 guests crammed into our 4,000-square-foot house, drinking eggnog and eating canapes and pretending to care about each other's lives. The Caldwells arrived at 7, Brittany looking stunning in a red dress, Steve working the room with that same easy charm I remembered from college. He found me near the bar. Great party, man. Lisa's outdone herself. His hand landed on my shoulder, warm, friendly, the gesture of an old friend. The same hand that had touched my wife in ways I tried not to picture. I smiled. She certainly has. How are the kids? Jake must be neck-deep in college applications by now. He is. Actually, he mentioned you helped him with his Stanford recommendation letter. Something about club soccer? Steve nodded, completely at ease. I coach his team. Have for the past 2 years. Great kid. Really talented. 2 years. Steve had been coaching my son's soccer team for 2 years, and I hadn't known. Lisa handled the sports schedules, signed the permission slips, drove the carpool. Lisa had installed her lover in our family without me ever noticing. That's really generous of you, I said, keeping my voice light. Must be hard to find time with the company and everything. You make time for the things that matter. I wanted to break his nose. Instead, I raised my glass. To making time. We clinked glasses. He moved on to his next conversation, and I watched him go, counting the months until his world collapsed. Later that night, after the guests had left and the kids had gone to bed, Lisa told me she was tired and headed upstairs. I checked her phone back up from my office. That was torture. I need to see you. Tomorrow? Our place? Steve's response. I'll make an excuse. Noon. Our place? They had an our place. The Graduate Hotel. Downtown Ann Arbor. December 23rd. I sat in the parking structure at 11:45 a.m., my car positioned with a clear view of the entrance. I wasn't following Lisa. Too risky, too easily spotted. But Brittany had planted an AirTag in Steve's briefcase, and the blue dot on my phone showed him heading north on 23. Lisa's white Lexus pulled in at 11:52. Steve's black Tesla arrived at 11:58. I sat and waited. Not for evidence, I had plenty of that. I waited because I needed to see it with my own eyes. Needed to sit in the cold silence of my car and let the reality of it settle into my bones. 2 hours passed. I checked my phone, answered some work emails, and tried not to think about what was happening 6 floors above me. At 2:15, another car pulled into the structure. A gray Audi. I recognized it immediately. Vincent Thornton's car. Lisa's father. I watched, frozen, as Vincent parked and walked toward the elevator. His face was set in an expression I'd never seen before. Cold rage, the kind that runs deep and burns slow. Brittany's PI, the photos. She must have sent them to Vincent. 15 minutes later, Vincent emerged. His face was red, his hands shaking. He got in his car and sat there for a long moment before pulling away. Then Steve came storming out, phone pressed to his ear, shouting at someone. He was disheveled in a way I'd never seen him. Tie loose, jacket askew, looking like a man whose world had just shifted under his feet. Then Lisa. Makeup ruined, mascara running down her cheeks, walking unsteadily toward her car. I didn't feel satisfaction. Not yet. Just a hollow sense of pieces finally falling into place. Vincent called me that evening. Tommy. His voice was rough, like he'd been crying or drinking or both. I need to see you. Can you come to the house? I drove over. Maria, Lisa's mother, was nowhere to be seen. Vincent sat alone in his study, a glass of whiskey in his hand. My daughter, he said without preamble. My little girl. 20 years, Tommy. 20 years she's been lying to all of us. I know. That man. Vincent's hand tightened on his glass. I gave him money. $500,000 because Lisa said he was a good investment. Said his company was solid. And the whole goddamn time, I know, Vincent. He looked at me with eyes that had aged a decade since the last time I'd seen him. I'm pulling my investment. Every penny. 90 days, I want it back plus interest. His lawyers can fight it if they want. I don't care. That'll collapse his company. Good. Vincent drained his whiskey. Let it collapse. Let it all come down around his ears and her... His voice broke. My daughter. What do I do with that? How do I look at her now? I didn't have an answer for him. There are no answers for something like that. I'm going to divorce her, I said. I wanted you to hear it from me. Vincent nodded slowly. I don't blame you. I wouldn't stay either. The children are your children, all three of them. Noah, too. His eyes met mine. I don't care what any test says. You raised that boy. You're his father. Don't let anyone tell you different. It was the kindest thing anyone had said to me in weeks. New Year's Day. Lisa was sleeping off the champagne from the night before. We'd gone to a party, played the happy couple, kissed at midnight while I counted down the hours until morning. At 10 a.m., I woke her gently. We need to talk? She followed me to my office, confused and bleary-eyed. I gestured for her to sit and pulled up the presentation I'd prepared on my monitor. I want you to understand what's about to happen. Slide 1. The photograph from the reunion. Her hand on Steve's back. Her face went white. Tom. Slide 2. Screenshots of messages. The Michigan Alumni Committee. I can explain. Slide 3. The 23andMe results. Please, just let me... Slide 4. Noah's DNA matched to Steve Caldwell. She stopped talking. Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Slide 5. The PI photographs from the Graduate Hotel. Slide 6. Her father's knowledge and his reaction. Slide 7. The divorce petition, already filed December 28th. Silence. Lisa stared at the screen, tears streaming down her face. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. It didn't mean anything. I almost laughed. Almost. 20 years and it didn't mean anything. That's your defense? That's not what I... Tom, please, just let me explain. Explain what? The messages? The photos? The hotel rooms? The fact that our son isn't our son, he's yours and Steve's. She flinched like I'd slapped her. Noah is your son. You raised him. You're his father. I know that. I'm not the one who forgot it. I never forgot. You let another man father your child and didn't say a word. For 14 years. You let me believe he was mine, let me love him as mine, while you kept your dirty little secret with the man who actually made him. Lisa was sobbing now, ugly crying in a way I'd rarely seen from her. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. The pregnancy, it was an accident. And I didn't know, not for sure. I hoped he was yours. I prayed he was yours. But you suspected. Yes, I suspected. But I couldn't. Tom, what was I supposed to do? Come to you and say, hey, by the way, our baby might belong to your college roommate? It would have destroyed everything. So you just kept going. For 20 years. I love you. She reached for my hand again, And again, I pulled away. I know that sounds insane right now, but it's true. I've always loved you. You're my best friend. You're an incredible father. You're... I'm your backup plan. The words came out flat, emotionless. I'd practiced them. I was your safety net while you kept your real life in storage. That's not true. That's not... It's what you wrote in an email to Steve 4 years ago. Tom is my safe harbor. You're my storm. That's what you called him. Your storm. The color drained from her face. You read that? I read everything, Lisa. I'm a forensic accountant. Reading everything is literally my job. I didn't mean it like that. How did you mean it then? Because from where I'm sitting, it seems pretty clear. You wanted the exciting life with Steve and the stable life with me, and you figured out how to have both. Congratulations. You beat the system for 2 decades. I made a mistake. You made a choice. Over and over again, for 20 years, you chose to lie. You chose to sneak around. You chose him. Every single time you got a text and smiled at your phone, every time you told me you had a dentist appointment, every time you came home from your little rendezvous and kissed me hello, you chose this. Lisa crumpled. There's no other word for it. She folded in on herself like something had been cut loose inside her, and she sat there on my office couch and wept. Part of me wanted to comfort her. 23 years of marriage doesn't disappear just because you've discovered it was built on sand. But I stayed where I was, on the other side of the desk, and let her cry. Counseling, she finally managed. We could do counseling. I'll end it with Steve. It's already over, my father saw to that. And we can work on us. We can rebuild. No. Tom, please. No counseling, no second chances, no rebuilding. I handed her a printout of the divorce filing. Her hands shook as she took it. You have 48 hours to move out. You can stay with your parents. Or Steve. I don't care which. But you're not staying here. The children will be told the truth. By me. You can have your own conversations with them after, but I will not stand by while you spin this into something it isn't. Tom, we're done, Lisa. We've been done for 20 years. You just forgot to tell me. She looked at me then. Really looked. Through the tears and the mascara and the devastation. And I saw something shift in her face. Recognition, maybe. An understanding that this wasn't a negotiation. I'm sorry, she whispered. I know you are. It's not enough. She left my office. I heard her footsteps on the stairs, the sound of a suitcase being pulled from the closet, the muffled sound of more crying behind our bedroom door. Our bedroom. Her bedroom now, for another 48 hours. Then mine. I sat in my office chair and stared at the screen, at the slides I'd assembled like evidence in a trial. The case of Tom Whitfield v. his entire life. Case closed. Judgment rendered. Defendant. Guilty. The collapse happened faster than I expected. Week 1. Vincent Thornton's lawyers filed for immediate return of his investment. Steve didn't have the liquid assets to cover it. I heard through Brittany that he'd been on the phone with banks for 3 days straight, trying to find bridge financing. Every door was closing in his face. Turns out, lenders don't like it when your father-in-law is publicly demanding his money back. Week 2. Steve tried to reach out to me. 2 phone calls, both ignored. 1 email that went straight to my attorney. He was looking for an ally, someone who might help him spin the narrative. He'd picked the wrong person. Week 3. The Defense Counterintelligence and Security Agency opened an investigation into Steve's security clearance. Brittany had filed the report, framing it as a concerned spouse who'd recently discovered inconsistencies in her husband's background. The undisclosed DUI was just the beginning. There was also a foreign contract he'd failed to report, financial entanglements that looked suspicious under scrutiny, and the affair itself, which created potential blackmail liability. All DoD contracts were suspended pending review. Week 4. Steve's CFO resigned. Then 2 senior engineers. The company was bleeding talent, and everyone could smell the end coming. Week 5. Brittany filed for divorce. Her Instagram announcement was carefully crafted, vulnerable but strong, honest but not vindictive. Sometimes the family you show the world isn't the family that exists. I'm choosing truth and healing. 2 million likes, thousands of supportive comments, sponsors reaching out to express their support. Brittany had turned her destruction into content, and her audience loved her for it. The prenup she'd signed, the one Steve had been so confident about, heavily favored her in cases of infidelity. She was getting almost everything. Week 8. Steve's company filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. 47 employees lost their jobs. The tech press covered it with barely concealed glee. Another arrogant founder brought low by his own hubris. Week 10. A journalist published a deep dive into Caldwell Digital's collapse. The article mentioned personal indiscretions and undisclosed conflicts of interest, and quoted anonymous sources describing a pattern of deception that went back decades. Steve Caldwell was finished. Not just in Detroit, everywhere. His reputation was gone. His money was gone. His clearance was revoked. The man who'd been my roommate, who'd stood as a groomsman at my wedding, who'd been sleeping with my wife since before our first anniversary, he was ruined. Last I heard, he was living in a rental apartment somewhere outside the city, working as a consultant for a company a tenth the size of what he'd built and lost. I wish I could say I felt triumphant. Mostly, I just felt tired. Lisa's destruction was quieter, but no less complete. She moved in with her parents, but Vincent could barely look at her. Her mother Maria cried constantly, caught between love for her daughter and horror at what she'd done. Lisa's childhood bedroom, still decorated with high school trophies and college pennants, became a kind of gilded cage. Her real estate license was threatened when a former client discovered she'd used one of his empty listings for an affair 2 years earlier. The showing that never happened. The keys she'd borrowed. He threatened to report her to the licensing board. Her broker suggested she take a sabbatical. Her friends stopped calling. The couples we'd known for decades, dinner parties, holiday gatherings, kids' birthdays, they all quietly disappeared from her life. Word spread, the way word always does in suburban communities. The PTA moms whispered. The book club found scheduling conflicts. The country club invitations dried up. By March, Lisa was alone. She and Steve weren't together. Apparently, he blamed her for everything, and she blamed him right back. The great love affair of 20 years had collapsed into mutual recrimination and pointed silence. Without the thrill of secrecy, without the danger of discovery, whatever they'd had dissolved like sugar in water. She tried to reconcile with me once, showing up at my new apartment downtown with tears and apologies and promises of change. I watched her through the peephole for a long moment, her mascara already running, a bottle of wine in her hand. Then I turned away and went back to the book I'd been reading. I didn't answer the door. April. The divorce was nearly finalized. I sat in my living room, a modest 2-bedroom loft that felt more like home than the 4,000-square-foot house ever had, and waited for my children. Emma came first, still wearing her Michigan sweatshirt from the drive down. She looked older than 19. The past few months had aged all of us. Dad? She hugged me tight. How are you holding up? Better than I expected. How about you? I'm okay. I talked to Mom last week. How is she? Emma shrugged, a complicated gesture that said more than words could. She cries a lot. Grandma says she barely leaves her room. She keeps asking about you, whether you've said anything, whether you might change your mind. I'm not going to change my mind. I know. Emma sat down on my second-hand couch. I don't blame you. I don't think I could forgive that either. Jake arrived 20 minutes later, his college acceptance letters a weight he carried into every conversation. He'd gotten into Purdue, his first choice, but the celebration had been muted, overshadowed by everything else. "Hey, Dad." He dropped his bag by the door. "Emma." We sat together in my small living room, and I told them what they needed to know. "I'm not going to pretend this is easy," I said, "or that there's a way to make it easy. Your mother was unfaithful, for a long time, with someone I thought was a friend. That's not something I can forgive or forget." "How long?" Jake asked. His voice was hard. 20 years, more or less. Since before I was born." "Yes." "So my whole life, everything I remember, she was lying. Every Christmas, every birthday, every family vacation, she was lying the whole time." "Yes?" Jake stood up and walked to the window. His shoulders were tight, his hands clenched at his sides. "I don't understand how someone can do that. How you can look at your kids every day and know you're living a lie." "I don't understand it either. I'm not sure anyone does." Emma was crying quietly, the way she'd cried at her grandmother's funeral, controlled, private, not wanting to make her grief anyone else's burden. "Did you ever suspect? Before?" "No. It was the truth, and it was shameful. I trusted her completely. I never had a reason not to." "That's not your fault, Dad." "Maybe not, but it feels like it is." "You can love your mother and be angry at her choices," I told Jake, who was still staring out the window. "Both things are true." "I don't want to love her right now," he said without turning around. "I know. That might change. It might not. Either way, it's okay." After they left, I asked Noah to stay. This was the conversation I'd been dreading for months. The words I'd rehearsed 100 times in my head, trying to find a version that wouldn't shatter the foundation of a 14-year-old's identity. Noah sat on the couch where his siblings had been, looking younger than his years. His blue eyes, Steve's eyes, I knew now, though I tried not to see it, watched me with a wariness I hated. "Am I in trouble?" he asked. "What?" "No. God, no. Noah, you're not in trouble." "Then why do you look like that?" "Like what?" "Like you're about to tell me someone died." I sat down across from him, took a breath, started. "Noah, I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear all of it before you respond, okay? Can you do that?" He nodded slowly. "I found out recently that I'm not your biological father." The words hung in the air between us. Noah's face went blank. Not confused, not upset, just blank. Like a computer screen that had frozen. "Your biological father is Steve Caldwell, the man you met at parties sometimes. Emma and Jake's old soccer coach." Still nothing. Then, quietly, "How do you know?" "DNA test, the 23andMe thing we did for Christmas. Your results didn't match mine." "Oh." He looked down at his hands. Does she know?" "She's known from the beginning, or at least suspected." "And she never told you?" "No." The silence stretched. I could hear traffic outside, the hum of the refrigerator, the tick of the clock I'd hung on the wall last week because the apartment felt too quiet without it. "But you're my dad," Noah said finally. His voice cracked on the last word. "I am." My own voice broke. "I am, and I always will be. I taught you to ride a bike. I held you when you had nightmares. I cheered at your baseball games and helped you with your homework and loved you every single day of your life. Biology doesn't change any of that." Does Steve? Does he know?" "He knows. He's known as long as your mother has. And he just let you raise me? Never said anything? He made his choice. Your mother made hers. They decided a long time ago that their secret was more important than the truth." Noah looked up at me, and I saw the anger building in his eyes. Not at me, but at them. at the two people who had treated his existence as collateral damage in their affair. "I don't want to know him," he said. "I don't want to meet him. I don't want anything to do with him." "Then you don't have to. That's your choice, always. But the information is yours, Noah. What you do with it is up to you." "You're my dad." "Yes, you're my dad," he repeated, like he needed to say it out loud to make it true. "I'm your dad. Nothing changes that. Not a test, not a piece of paper, not anything." He hugged me then, the first real hug in years, the kind of fierce embrace I remembered from when he was small. I held on tight and let myself cry for the first time since this whole thing started. "I choose you, Dad," he whispered into my shoulder. "I choose you too, bud. Always have. Always will." A year later, I sat in a coffee shop across from Brittany Caldwell. Brittany Taylor again. She'd gone back to her maiden name, and listened to her describe her latest project. A producer from Netflix called yesterday. They're doing a documentary series about high-profile divorces. They want my story. The Instagram influencer angle. Something like that. The whole marriage as performance thing. The way social media makes it easier to lie to everyone, including yourself. She stirred her latte. They want the whole story. Steve, Lisa, everything. That truth includes all of us. It does. They want interviews with everyone involved. Obviously, Steve won't cooperate, and Lisa, I doubt she'd participate. What about you? Are you going to do it? Brittany considered. I think so. I've spent the last year rebuilding my life. New apartment, new focus, new sense of what actually matters. Telling the truth publicly feels like the final step. It'll rip everything open again. The kids. I know. That's why I wanted to talk to you first. If you're opposed, I won't do it. I won't put your children through more pain just to boost my profile. I thought about it. About Noah, who called me every night before bed now. A ritual we'd started during the divorce and neither of us wanted to stop. About Emma and Jake, who'd found their own equilibrium, their own relationships with their mother that were complicated but functional. About the whole messy, painful, ultimately survivable year we'd all endured. Tell your story, I said finally. If they need someone to corroborate the details, I'll consider it. Brittany nodded. Thank you. For everything, really. I don't know how I would have gotten through this without you. You would have figured it out. You're tougher than you think. So are you. We finished our coffee and said goodbye. She headed off to another meeting, another step in her reinvented life. I walked to my car, checking my phone out of habit. A text from Noah. Hey, Dad. Jake's driving me crazy about college stuff. Can I come over tonight? I smiled. Typed back. Always, bring your homework. I'll order pizza. The Michigan sky was gray, threatening rain, but I didn't mind. The air smelled like spring. New grass, wet earth, the promise of things starting over. I drove home. My real home now, not the one built on 20 years of lies. The one I'd made for myself, in the wreckage of a life I thought I understood. It wasn't the life I'd planned. It wasn't the family I'd imagined, back when I was young and stupid and believed that love was enough to keep people honest. But it was mine. And that, I'd learned, was worth more than all the champagne glasses in the world. 6 months after that, I got the call from Patricia Webb on a Thursday afternoon. The documentary aired last night, she said. I assume you've seen the response? I had. Brittany's episode had been the third in the series, and it had been comprehensive. She'd told everything. Steve's lies, the affair, the company collapse, the security clearance fraud. My name came up only briefly, as the other spouse who was betrayed, and the filmmakers had respected my request for privacy. But the internet had done its own detective work. Within hours of the episode dropping, people had connected the dots. Steve Caldwell's name was trending again, along with Lisa Thornton Whitfield's, dredged up from the comfortable obscurity she'd tried to build in the years since the divorce. I've had 3 reporters call my office looking for comment, Patricia continued. I told them all to pound sand. But you should know, Lisa's lawyer reached out this morning. What does she want? She wants to modify the custody arrangement, claims the documentary constitutes harassment and is affecting her relationship with the children. I laughed. A short, humorless sound. She's the one who had the affair. Brittany's the one who told the story. I had nothing to do with either. I know. It won't go anywhere. But I wanted you to hear it from me first. Thanks, Patricia. One more thing. Steve Caldwell tried to file a defamation suit against Brittany yesterday. It was dismissed within hours. Everything she said was documented and verifiable. But he also named you as a co-conspirator. Of course he did. Like I said, it won't go anywhere. But the man is clearly desperate. Watch your back. I hung up and sat in my office for a long time, thinking about Steve Caldwell. About the boy I'd known in college. Charming, ambitious, a little too smooth for his own good. About the man he'd become. The lies, the betrayals, the endless appetite for things that didn't belong to him. He'd taken 20 years of my life, my wife, my trust, my belief that the world made sense if you just worked hard enough and loved fiercely enough. But he hadn't taken my children. He hadn't taken my career, my integrity, my ability to rebuild. And now, watching his final desperate flailing as the consequences caught up with him, I found I didn't feel much of anything at all. Not satisfaction, not pity, not rage. Just a kind of weary acceptance that some people never learn, never change, never understand that the lies they tell eventually tell on them. My phone buzzed. Noah, again. Saw some stuff online about Mom. Are you okay? I smiled. Typed back, I'm fine. Are you okay? Yeah, just checking on you. That's my job, checking on you. Maybe it goes both ways now. Maybe it does. Pizza tonight? Always. I put down my phone and looked out the window. The sun was setting over the city, painting the buildings gold and orange and red. 20 years of lies. 3 children. 1 devastating truth. And somehow, impossibly, a life that was finally, authentically, my own.